And he joins us now, the man himself, the boss, the man who had the best night out of anybody, I think, at the Schmoedown Spectacular #4. He is Ben the Boss Bateman, the new Movie Trivia Schmoedown Singles Champion. Ben, welcome to the show.
What's up, guys? How you doing? This is exciting to finally be on the show, not doing something just talking about like a big loss or a big theatrical moment, but talking about the chip, the actual thing, the thing it's all about, just being the champ. And I'm pretty pleased. It's been a pretty good week.
Now, I will say this. So, I was sitting up in the second level during your championship match, the upper balcony, and as it became kind of clear where the outcome was going to be, I was sitting next to Video Drew, and I said, I'm gonna go down there. I want to be at side stage when this match is coming to its end. So I snuck down there, went to the side of the stage, and Ben, as soon as you won and you did your speech, you looked over at me and you said, "Window wide open." Talk to me. So because I said, hey, this is his shot. This is his moment. If he doesn't get it here, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to ever be able to get it done. But you did get it done. Just talk to me about just that night overall.
I mean, the night was crazy. I think because I've been through it so many times now, especially obviously played for a title match before at Spectacular. I've gotten used to that feeling, expectation. And I think when you experience that loss, when you're expecting to win and it happens a few times, you kind of go in and it's not the same like, oh, I'm here, so I'm going to do it. It was sort of like I felt something different. I knew I was going to do it that day, but it wasn't in the same way that I ever had gone into a match knowing that I was going to do it. And that night, like, it's funny that if I watched back the matches, and you can tell the Bibbs match actually it means so much more to me when I win it than the Oyama match, which is not really what it is. Winning the championship means more, but I think there was Bibbs was the mountain to climb, right? But once I had climbed that mountain,
right. I
mean, you can ask the other horsemen, but there was zero chance I was losing to Oyama. It was not going to happen. It was literally like there was just like electricity coming off my body once I had gotten that first win. And I mean, we were down in the basement. It was a huge theater. It's like massive maze. We were kind of hiding down in the basement, Riley and I, and Merle was there, and we were drilling some questions, and it was in a tougher category. And I was thinking I'm doing above average in this category. That's kind of tougher for me. I'm really, and Riley just looked at me, I think 15 minutes before the match started, and he was like, "Dude, you're good. You're crushing it. You got to stop. Just go get in the right headspace." And I think the night was really special. It's weird. It's weird to do it like that, right? 2 5-round matches at Spectacular, both knockouts. It's storybook stuff. It's this kind of stuff that when it's happening, it doesn't feel like it's the story, but that's exactly what it is. When I look back at it, that's exactly what it is. You couldn't have scripted it any better or any differently. That's exactly how it had to happen.
Now, I said it here earlier on the show, but I really felt confident in Bibiani. I just thought that he was on such this monster run.
Yeah.
I thought, man, I think he's got a shot to go out there, beat Ben, win the team titles, and walk out with the singles championship. But then I told Frank, and we had a conversation that you and I and Frank we had like a little powwow on the stage there before anyone was let in for the expo. And you were just talking to us about kind of how confident you were, a little bit of your strategy and stuff like that. And I don't want to reveal anything that you said, but afterward, I heard of Frank, and I was like, I think Ben can actually do it. I think he's going to do it. And just because you looked at this game differently than anybody else I've ever talked to at length about the game. Strategically, you've always been phenomenal. I mean, we've always known that you've had great strategy, but you and I had a conversation about Daryl Moore, and it was just the analytical way that you looked at this game is just far superior to any of your contemporaries. And it really made me think Ben's going to go out there and do it.
I think so. Christian actually revealed what you're talking about on backstage yesterday, which is funny. Yeah, and I wasn't there, obviously.
He's revealed a couple of people's strategies before, and I remember Bibiani. Remember when Bibiani had that trick of he was writing like longer than the answer was on his board to like try to throw people off. Like Christian blew up his spot on that. So great job, Commish. But anyway, continue.
Used a little bit of the trick. I was doing it a little bit in those matches. You learn from everyone else, but I can talk a little bit about the thing you're talking about, just because Christian talked about it, and I think I've been thinking a lot about how that all works, because the crazy thing was that the 3 knockouts, Brendan Meyer into Bibiani into Uyama, it's like the strategy stuff that I had put all the time into had never really it had never worked in the way that it worked. It always would work here and there, but in these particular cases, each match had a very distinct, specific thing that it feels like won me the match, or at least got me damn close. By the way, is my connection all right here, guys?
You're good right now.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So in the Meyer match, we've talked a little bit about it, but identifying that I thought he would be weak in James. Obviously, the luck of James Bond happening, but like having the category on the wheel, and then. In the next match against Bibiani, what Christian talked about is, because here's the thing about Bibiani, and this is where strategy is different for a player like that than it is against somebody like a Brendan Meyer. Brendan Meyer's much younger. No matter how much you know about movies, no matter how much you love movies, it's the same for Oyama. At 22, 15, naturally, there's things you want to see. So if you go watch Chinatown or you go watch Citizen Kane, those are intentional. Those are classic movies. You're going to watch those if you love movies. But, having seen a bad James Bond movie from the mid-'80s, or, if you are somebody like Bibiani in one of his matches when he misses a Coco question, it's like one of the matches, he misses a Coco question and he says, I don't know, I didn't see it. You can think about that. You can categorically profile what that means and why. And obviously then I did additional research, but that should be like a clue, right? So Bibiani's a movie critic. He's been a movie critic for years. He's watched as many movies as anyone I've ever met. The guy knows seemingly everything about movies. Coco won Best Animated Film that year. It was a huge release. The movie made almost $1 billion. It was loved by everyone. If you're telling me that you're a professional movie critic, there's 25 Pixar movies or something. One of them comes out. It's highly regarded. This is not Cars 3. And you don't see it, it means you don't really care about the category. Doesn't mean that you dislike it. It just means that it's not an event for you. It's not special, right? So like you hear somebody talk about the MCU fondly, they're not going to miss an MCU movie. They're going to watch all of them. So when I started doing the research, I was just looking for an angle. I wasn't looking for a category against Bibiani that he'd get 0 points, and that doesn't exist against the guy. There's some players will have a silver bullet like that where you can put a category on the wheel. I've talked about this a little bit, and you want to do your best to do that. A player like Bibiani, there's 0 chance. It's not going to happen against McQueenie. There's guys that if you put a category on the wheel, all you're hoping is they don't get 8 points. Right? You're hoping the best shot you can in a singles match that they're going to get 50%, 60%. That's what you want. And so, with Bibiani, I had done the research. I had figured out that Pixar was, at least based on the information that was out there, a vulnerable category. And it was a category that I had studied at one point getting ready for a match against Chance a year and a half ago or something like that, or a year ago. So I just went and brushed up on it, made sure that what I had done then was still there, and it felt like, obviously movie release dates is the one category against Bibiani that is a silver bullet, but I needed a second. And so for it to work against Bibiani like that, obviously him getting 5 points, it's not like I crushed him with Pixar, but 5 points is a lot better than 8 points. And I do believe that when he guessed up in the third answer, I think he just as easily could have guessed Toy Story 3. It felt like I could read it on him that he was trying to decide which one to guess. You can just see it. There's body language. So he guesses correctly, obviously, but that could have just ended the match right there if he had guessed Toy Story 3. And anyway, so yeah, and then that match, and then you go into the match with Paul, and the interesting thing about that is he obviously got this like really, really crappy classics category. That's just what happened. It wasn't.
It's rough.
Yeah, and I have Paul and I actually talk a decent amount. I really respect a lot of what he's done in terms of his studying for the game and how seriously he takes it. I think what just happened to him in that match is going to be a really bum rap he's going to get. I don't think it's reflective of him as a player really at all. And I think he's going to come back twice as strong. I think his kid's a scary player. But, we were talking a little bit, and he says he would take classics again. So I kind of want to expound on this for a second. I considered maybe not talking about this because there's a level of strategy that you don't want to reveal because I'm going to have to defend and I intend to, win multiple championships this next year, and I need a way to do it. But I do think that it's important to point out to people because I love the strategy and the statistics of the game. So let's just say you put a category of classics on the wheel. Let's say you put comedy on the wheel, action, adventure, drama, 90s, any broad category, any category that encompasses at least 2,000 movies. And you get a set of questions like Paul got. What's the answer? Why did you miss those questions? The answer to the question is that you got a bunch of questions, and specifically you got questions about movies maybe you've seen that you just couldn't answer, right? But you didn't know what movies you were going to get asked about because it's 2,000 plus movies, so there's zero preparation you can do for it. All you can do is say, I have a pretty good grasp on this category. And in the past, when I've gotten it, it's worked well for me. But if I miss questions in Pixar, the answer is that I didn't watch the movies recently enough or I wasn't paying attention because there's 25 movies. It's the same thing with James Bond. It's the same thing with every director. It's the same thing with every actor. The movies on the wheel, it's like 76 movies or something, or maybe it's more than that. But like it's 100 movies maybe is the most, right? So if that's the case, that means that you have these finite categories you can study. And if you're going for a knockout strength, those are the things you want to go after because if you miss a question, you can rectify it the next time. The broad categories are risky, and they're risky for people because it's indefensible. You can't explain why you miss questions. It just has everything to do with what got asked. So I think it's
a degree of luck.
It's totally, the variance is so wild, and I think the only player that has a category that they truly can guarantee is like the category is Drew McQueenie with 80s.
Yeah.
He's literally watched every single movie, and he's done them all in the last few years. I mean, he literally just watched them all in sequence. So like, I can't really argue with that.
Exactly. Yeah. He's the exception to that rule. Yeah.
We've seen a lot of players take broad categories and just do just fine. It's just that, like, from an analytics perspective, if you're trying to figure out why you're winning or losing matches, there's no explanation when you miss questions in a broad category. There just isn't.
Yeah. Now, Frank, I mean, you and I, like we said, we talked a lot about Ben, leading up to this match. But I know that, this was something that you definitely had your statistics out for.
Yeah, I mean, when you looked at it, specifically this year between Bibbs and Bateman, head to head, there's very little margin of separation. Ben actually played a little bit better, but I kind of gave a slight advantage to Bibbs just because he played tough competition every single time he was going out there. I mean, he played triple threat match against Roka and Irwin. He played Merle and lost that one, but then he had to play Chance in his first round, then played Ethan Irwin in the second round, which is ridiculous. And then he had to play John Roka in the semifinal, and then he had to play another tough guy right now, Ben Bateman, for this final. So, and then you look at what he had to do in teams. So he's been playing tough competition every single time going out there, and he's played at an elite level. And on top of that, he's come out on top of those decisions. Ben, he's the rookie slayer. He played a bunch of rookies, talented rookies, and Brendan Meyer and Paul Preston and the like. So and Paul Oyama as well, obviously. So it was such both playing at such a great high level, but both playing different kinds of play and competitors. It was just really like, I don't know. I went with Bibbs just because he played against tougher play, and I thought that might suit him well against a tough player who brings tough play in Bateman and you, Ben. So but it was like, what else am I going to go on? Because it's so close to call. I was looking for any kind of thing to grab onto to make some sense of this match, because honestly, if it wasn't for the Inner Geekdom match, Bateman and Bibiani was definitely my second most anticipated match of the night, just because of the level of play you guys were playing at, and the way this match ended up was just kind of inexplicable. Both of your matches, it was just like,
yeah.
I think I said this in a comment somewhere. Look, I don't know if Bibiani or Paul Oyama could have won their matches, but I do know that the results that we got are in direct, or mostly in a direct correlation to the spins that they got and the categories that they ended up landing on. I don't think you get those types of decisions without the wheel doing you some favors, but again, you did your homework, and look, it landed on what it landed on, and that paid off. So I can't say one way or the other who would have won or who would have lost if the spins don't go that way, but we for sure don't get those kinds of results without the type of preparation you put into and the little bit of luck you got with those categories. So in a nutshell, that's what I think. Yeah.
I did think a lot about that, actually, and I don't want to belabor the sort of micro decisions in each match too much unless you guys are going to ask about them, but there was a bunch of like little moments in the different matches that I tried to think if they had gone a different way. For instance, if I don't get that challenge against Bibiani and he gets the 2-point steal there, then where do we stand going into the betting round, and then how does that affect the speed round? But I think that you can point to a lot of different things that happen, because while I did get a lot of luck in my matches, new releases is relatively broad category. It's years worth of movies, and it's not necessarily, I never put it on the wheels of strength. It's just, I'm a critic, so I watch a lot of movies, so and it was my first spin, so I didn't get a strength.
Yeah.
Right. Like, he got bad luck with his spins, definitely, but he also tilted really, really, really hard going into the speed round. Because if you think about it, even with the steal being what it was and it not working and me getting that challenge, he gets movie release dates and he knows what's going to happen. And exactly what he fears is exactly what happens. Now, he's correct in betting 1, and he knows I'm going to bet 3. But even at that point, all that happens is I'm up 4 points going into the speed round. If he goes in and he has a dynamic speed round, and he really focuses, he's laser focused, we could go into that final round with me up 2-3 points. And at that point, I mean, obviously he misses his 5, and the 5 is a hard question, but the lead was not insurmountable. It became insurmountable because I absolutely annihilated that speed round. That's what won me the game in the end. It put the game away. So I think the Bibiani match, I got a lot of luck. And then with Polyama, if you're going to tell me that me getting 7 out of 8 points on Julia Roberts and keeping the category, I can't remember if I spun off something else, but it was like very, very clearly a category.
Spun off comedy.
So yeah, not a strength category for me historically. I've never gotten Julia Roberts. Actress categories tend to be, for a lot of players, a little bit weaker. And I was prepared for it. I'd done my homework. That was my category taken. I was totally fine getting it.
Now, to go back real quick to the challenge. I mean, it was the new release question regarding what men want with Taraji P. Henson. The question was like, what was her job?
Yeah.
And you gave several answers, I think. Like,
an elongated
answer. Long-winded
answer.
Yeah.
Now, I 100% knew what you were going for, right?
Yeah.
I do think that they should have ruled against you, though. I definitely think that they should have ruled against you. Do you think so?
You're asking me if I think that I should have been ruled against?
Yeah. Looking back at it now.
I don't know. It's there's like a number. There's a number of different like sort of answers to that question, because think about this, right? You guys are big NBA fans. You guys, so Brad's a big NBA fan, but you're a sports fan, right, Frank?
Oh yeah. Oh no, I was responding to your decision. No. Yeah.
So all right, like games in the playoffs are officiated differently than games in the regular season, right? Stars get calls. Some people don't get calls. So it's a huge moment. It's a huge moment. It's Christian and Mark. What they're trying to decide in that moment is, okay, Christian was sitting next to me in that screening. We reviewed that movie 6 months ago. I answered all of the words necessary to answer that question correctly. He knows that I know it because he was sitting next to me when I watched the movie. So he knows what I'm trying to express, right? And that's obviously, that's like personal interaction. Based on the words uttered by me, maybe you can argue that it shouldn't be given to me. On the other hand, her position in the movie, you can basically say she's a talent agent, she's a sports agent, or she works on campaigns that involve advertising with talent as an agent, an executive, an agent. Like, so my point is, if they rule against me there, I understand why. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to cry all the way home, but most games we don't even use our challenges. I've said this in the past on this show before. Challenge or answer is correct if you want a breather. Challenge just to mess with your opponent sometimes. Like, I was pretty positive in that moment that if I got that ruling, if in any way somehow it went in my favor there, it was going to mess with Bibiani very hard, like extremely hard. It's the same reason that often I'll go down to 1 when I could go down to 3 when I'm counting down, right? Like, the last second, there is mental warfare. It's the same thing I did with the spinner on Classics with Ayama. You just want to complicate every decision that hopefully is easy for your opponent. And I think, like, if Bibiani was frustrated by the ruling, I probably would have been frustrated too. But you're going to challenge something, and that felt like a perfectly reasonable thing to challenge.
I think it was definitely a reasonable challenge on your part. And I've said this in the past, in situations like that, make the judges make a tough call, and if it goes your way, that's not on you. That's on the judges with their decision. Right. You just put them in a tight spot, and good for you, because that's playing the game. So, but I do agree with Brad that look, she's a sports agent. It says it right on the back of the box of the movie. It's like it says it on the Wikipedia entry. It's just I don't and here's the other thing. And look, you said what you said about Christian. He knows that you've seen the movie, and he knows what you're trying to get at. But it's like that's where things can get tricky, and I don't want to completely say the word unfair, but it's like he knows what you're getting at, but he shouldn't have that kind of knowledge. Sometimes it's in there subliminally, and he's not doing it on purpose, but it's in there, and he knows that but you still need to say the right words. That's required for the answer. So
no, totally. And so my point is that, like, when I mentioned the thing about stars getting calls in the NBA, it's like, okay, those refs that are in the finals that have officiated Steph Curry and LeBron James for 7 years collectively in a row, when it gets to that 6th and 7th year and they're trying to go for a similar call in a similar situation, they have way more experience at high level with LeBron James than they do with this rookie who's the first year guy, and they've never it's that sort of a thing. And so I don't disagree at their level of it, but life is not fair. I mean, you can't make it fair. It's impossible.
Right. Let me ask you just real quick. This isn't about your matches, but it's about challenges in general. And it was a really weird, I thought, challenge that we saw a couple weeks ago in the Looney Bin match, where Video Drew challenged the category of the movie.
Yeah.
Did you see this?
Yep.
And then she was asked a question just to her. What did you think about that ruling?
Because she challenged that American Psycho was a horror movie, and then they threw it out and they gave her a new question, right?
Right.
Yeah, but they allowed all the other 3 competitors to keep their answers, which were correct, and they just gave her a new question.
I think that's kind of weird. I think that's kind of a weird situation. I think there's some part of some of the rulings that we've been getting this year and last year, as this game is transitioning into a full-fledged sport. There's a level of it wanting to be fair, but I've also talked to Ellis before, because Christian is pretty involved in the show running, right? He has a lot of responsibilities that go beyond making calls and rules. So Ellis, when we're live, will often have a little bit more of a hand in the rulings. Right. And what Ellis will sometimes lean into is, look, I want the value of this show to be high. I'm not going to make an unfair judgment. I'm not going to award somebody something they shouldn't. But he will say, I don't want this to be a bad product. And I don't remember the nature of the situation necessarily with Video Drew, but I don't seem to remember that the Looney Bin were they winning at that point? I feel like they were losing at that point.
I think they're down by 1 or 2, something like that. Yeah, it was close, though.
Or maybe she wasn't playing well is what it was. I think she had missed a bunch of points, and I think that, so there's a level to it that's there, and this is just me guessing because I wasn't there for that, but I do think that the challenges are going to be much more significant for us to be discussing this next year, because the management side of the game is going to so greatly affect the way this goes. In a perfect world for me, in every match I'm in, I want Finstock and Merle and Roca. I want 3 laptops. I want a research team literally doing on-site, immediate research when a question is asked. Is every aspect of the wording correct? Is it, is there something we can fight here? I basically want a team of lawyers for me. Because there's only there is. You can contest so much. I mean, Yama was telling me that he almost challenged the Money Monster, because I said the Money Monster instead of just Money Monster. And that's one that maybe he gets that ruling. I don't know. It's possible he gets that ruling. So there's the nuances there are there's a lot of them, and I think management's gonna have their hands full. You're gonna see matches that are decided by a manager next year. It's gonna happen, and players that don't have a good manager are gonna be pissed.
I wanted to ask, so we talk about management. I know how important it was for you to win the championship, because you were always touted as the guy. I mean, you literally took Bibiani's place as, hey man, it's so good, but he just can't win the title. I know that was a big deal for you to actually win, but what was a bigger deal? After you beat Bibiani, was it bigger to you to win the championship just to erase that moniker of the best player to not win a title? or was it more important for you to win the championship to keep intact the Finn Stock Exchange?
It was more important for me to have the title that I have than the Finn Stock Exchange is great, and I'm pretty excited for this next year. I think like we have a pretty unfair advantage based on what we did.
Yeah.
At
yeah.
Spectacular.
Yeah.
Y'all are literally the 2017-18 Warriors.
Yeah, it's really not fair. But we'll see. I mean, there's a lot more parity than people realize with these new players. You know, a lot of these rookies that have had one season under their belt, you're going to see, I think, a pretty big leap from a lot of these guys who have now had the big matches and understand the game differently. I even think my road to the title is going to look pretty impressive after next year. I have a feeling Brendan Meyer is going to win a championship this next year, one way or another. I wouldn't be surprised if he takes the team belt at some point during the year. You know, I think there's a pretty good chance Paul Preston goes on a run. I think he looks really good. Yeah. You know, obviously, if Brendan wins a championship, that means Bibiani will. So I'm pretty confident that we're going to see a big jump from these guys. But it meant more to me to win because I think the thing that I was feeling most is in April, I'll have been doing it for 3 years. And pretty much from day one, I was a pretty big part of the show. You know, Team Action came in 2017. I think I was talking to Frank about this on Twitter maybe, but like we came in 2017 and we went 5-1. That was how we started. So really my story starts 5-1 with the team. And I was so much less seasoned. I was so much worse of a player. I didn't understand the game. The game really wasn't even what it is now then at all. And then right. I lost to Inman in the 5-way. And my singles record the next year was, I want to say 2-2. Beat Dale Gibbs, beat Mance, lost to Andreyko, lost to Roca, lost to Clark. So it was 2-3 last year in singles. You know, Team Action, we started 5-1, we ended 6-4. So, you know, I went 1-3 with Team Action after that. You know, and so going 3-6 after a 5-1 start made my 2018 pretty tough. And I think I would continue to battle and try to learn and be better and be better and be better. And when that tournament started last year, when the gauntlet started, you know, I beat Janine, I beat Lon, I lost to Clark, right? That was the third one in there. And obviously Who's the Boss wins the tournament. You know, we lose to the Shire Wolves, but there was this feeling I was starting to have of like, when it goes my way, I can win the big moments. But when it doesn't go my way, I'm just a middling player. And it's so hard to get to the big dance. It's so hard to get those opportunities to win a championship that this occupies so much of my heart, like my brain, but like my emotional state through the year is so affected by this game that I started to feel like if I go on another run like I did in 2018, where it's super middling, this is when I lost to Kalinowski, is when I was really feeling it the most. Yeah. Like, do I want to put myself through this more? And it was like, am I going to quit without winning a belt? Like, am I going to play another year and I don't do it? And then I have all these accolades and all these stats and all these wins, but no championship. And I think just to know that I did it and I did it in this particular way. And so now, no matter what, at any point in time, if I decide it's time to walk away, I can do it, is probably the most like calming thing. We've joked about this, but I do feel a lot like Dirk in 2011. That very much feels like how this feels to me. Like I had a career, put a lot of time into it. I got a championship. Everything else is gravy.
Right. I mean, this was like like I said, I don't know. I heard you actually on the Action guys use my championship window analogy. Just throw that out there. And I actually, I thought that you actually lended some credence to it based just upon how many more opportunities will come up. You know, I think you were talking about Christopher Plummer in the Oscars or what have you, or something like that, or Ed Harris. It was just like how many more opportunities will come up for you to get it done, and you had this opportunity, and man, you cashed in on it big. and I will say this, like I try to remain as, you know, just impartial as I can, just watching the matches. I'm not rooting for anyone to win. I'm just watching them and just seeing which way is it going to go. But like I was excited that you won. I was super happy
that you were able to pull off a victory, just because I knew what it meant to you. I knew what it meant for the league, and I knew that I just thought it was a great thing when you just looked at me and you said window wide open. That's why I wanted to be there at the side of the stage whenever it happened. But Frank, I know you got something before we let the new champ go.
Yeah, I mean, talking about your run this year in singles, I mean, you have now the top 3-game win streak, 4-game win streak, 5-game win. I mean, accuracy rate is through the roof at like 90-something percent, 91%.
Even with those classics misses.
Yeah. No, I think actually probably high 80s. Yeah. Yeah.
Because the classics misses.
I think it's like 88%, but I have to double check. But nonetheless, your win streaks, 3, 4, 5, top the best. Tops Merle, tops Ethan Irwin, tops Rachel Cushing's, tops them all. And like even you were just even Bibbs too. His stuff was really impressive. His 3 and his 4-game win streaks. Better than anybody else's, but yours was just a little bit better. So you also, I think, are now the fifth or sixth player to ever have was it a 4 or 5-game win streak? So not that many people, have done that. You look at your Merles, obviously, and but notably, and Sam Levine, obviously, in that list. So not many people have done what you've done. You're like the 3rd player to ever win both tournaments, maybe not in the same year, but ever. You've won the teams.
It's got to be what Sam and who's the other person that won both tournaments? Like Riley?
Yeah,
Riley.
Riley.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So only you 3 guys. You can say what you will about the 2014 tournament, but it is a tournament. So a lot of firsts, a lot of rare air that you're in, and it was just a hell of a year capped off. Also, theoretically, I put together like a point system that we're going to have for next season for the managers and all that. And for this year, you're the top point getter theoretically amongst all players and teams and all of that. So,
wow.
It's you had a great run. You're racking up the points. Your knockouts specifically 3 knockouts this year, the most anyone's ever
4.
had. Well,
4.
I'm talking about knockouts, not TKOs. I separated the yeah. So
gotcha.
you have 3 knockouts and 1 TKO. Yeah, you have 4, but the 3 knockouts, the most any player's ever had in a single season. So it's and wow. Yeah, you look at the run up is you knocked out Brendan Meyer, then you TKO'd Bibiani, then you knocked out Paul Oyama to win the belt. Your 3 matches. I mean, no one's ever done that, and I don't think anyone's ever going to do that. I mean, not even Dan Merle, who has like 8 total knockouts. Has a knockout and 7 TKOs. So it's.
Are you player of the year, Ben? Are you player of the year? Do you think you should win it?
I heard Christian talking about it on backstage actually, and it's I mean all the other nominees that I think are going to go up are pretty valid. I think it's pretty hard to argue against Dan Merle.
Yeah.
Is the thing, my stablemate. I do think there's a level of like, if Dan wins the Player of the Year award this year, then we're rewarding the fact that he was a stellar player for the year. He was a great player this year, but Dan also was a great player in other years, right? Like he. Right. I think if I was to get it, it would be because people would look at it and go, this person has loved it and cared about it more than anyone, and they did it in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. Like the knockouts, 2 5-rounders at Spectacular live to end the year.
Yeah.
Like I think if nothing else for the idea, sort of, it's almost like a storyline MVP. It's like as much as the accomplishment as it is what it sort of means to the game to have had somebody. To have me being who I've been to the game to get it the way I got it. That's the only way I think I would beat Dan, but on just a pure accomplishment level, like it's obviously about how you end, which is why Kalinowski won't win it.
Yeah.
But there was a moment when it seemed like he was going to.
And like here's the thing too is if you give it to Dan, he didn't play in the singles tournament and didn't play in the teams tournament, which is crazy that you would still be able to award the guy Player of the Year. There's certainly an argument for you and Dan Merle. But if you're going to award Dan Merle, you're also recognizing the fact he didn't play in the teams tournament, didn't play in the singles tournament. I mean, it's fair to say he didn't play in the teams because he had the belt, but he didn't go and play in the singles tournament when, I understand schedule is probably a thing, but he could have played in the singles tournament and didn't. So, and he ended up losing the belt. His last match was against Paul Oyama. So it's pretty crazy that he could win it and never have played in either tournament this year.
Who are the guys? Let me ask you guys a question really quickly, if I have you for a minute, because I'm curious to know you guys break this down every week. So season 7, who are the players? You can pick a couple each that I think will win a never won. Not like somebody who's never won any belts, but like who's the person who, a non-singles who's going to win the singles title, teams who's going to win teams. Like who are the players that you've got your eye on that you really think they really think you're going to do it this next year? You got your eye on.
Ooh, this one's tough, but
I got a couple, but go ahead, Frank. You go first.
I think that the first one, honestly, the name that came to my mind right away was Chance for singles.
You think Chance will win the singles title this year?
I really think he can. I think he can do it. It's gonna be tough. I mean, he's gotten some pretty bad luck going up against Ethan Irwin and Bibiani in tournament matches. But with that being said, if he's gonna win the title, he's gonna have to beat players like that. He's more than capable.
He's also going to have beat me, That's the reality of it.
Right. And
he is the champion. I don't know if you knew that, Frank.
Well, what I'm talking, you know what I'm saying. Come on. So
I do. Yeah.
He could do it. He could do it, man. It would be interesting.
As far as what I thought, I actually thought about this. Just like who are two people who I could see who haven't even had an opportunity at a championship become champion in their respective divisions. I think that one of them is Chandru. I think Chandru, man, that guy is so good in interdeep. What we've seen so far. I think that he's another guy who's just had a couple of bad breaks as far as questions and matchups go. I mean, we saw what happened to him in the Kevin Smets match, to get into the spectacular. I mean, he was right there. So I think Chandru can go out there and do it. And I think this Tom guy from the Looney Bin, you get him in the free-for-all, and he gets an opportunity that way. This is a guy who has that. I think he might have as much movie knowledge as a Bibby, just sheer, first-round ability. You know how Bibbs just tears through that free-for-all. I think Tom is one of those guys who has that knowledge base, who could go out there and do it. As far as people who had an opportunity at championships, you already said one. Brendan Meyer, I definitely think, has an opportunity to go out there. And I think teams is probably more likely than singles. But I think that he could definitely be a champion next season.
Interesting.
For
sure. I think it's going to be a very exciting year. I think there's so much talent in the league now. I think one of the things that, again, Christian and I talked a little bit about it, but it's, if you look at the top 10 players all time right now in Schmoedown, if that's a conversation you have, which I know a lot of people talk about, there was a time maybe a year ago where like the, 7 through 10 they were like pretty good players. They were players that had like, an accomplishment or two, maybe like a team title or, good reputation. But if you look at the top 10 right now, and then you look at 11 through 20, and obviously we're doing a lot of this with the draft, that's kind of how we're ranking it. But on all-time accomplishments, if you look at that top 10, I mean, I just did what I just did. And I think that the reality is that I'm probably barely breaking the top 10 with like you just said, the greatest singles run ever, statistically, the most impressive title win for a singles player ever.
Yeah.
Spectacular double back-to-backs. Like, if that's barely getting me in the top 10 after 3 years of play, challenging for a team's belt, winning the singles title, the level of talent in the league is nuts. Like, for me to start to really climb those ranks, I'm going to have another absolutely stellar year, like a really insane year.
Yeah, and there's no guarantee that can happen because look at Ethan Irwin. Crazy run in singles last year. Tough matchups to begin the year, against Dan Merle, and in that triple threat. It didn't go his way, and that was it, and then only played 2 matches in the teams tournament. And that was it. And we really have not seen from him at all. And so I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but like that's a realistic possibility.
Yeah, I agree. It's just a different league than it used to be, guys. I mean, again, we keep talking about, comparing it to the NBA, but it's similar to the NBA right now. There is so much talent in the NBA right now compared to 10, 15 years ago. It's not even close. It's an unfair comparison.
And none of it is on the Bulls. I hate it. It's great.
Yeah. Some good players.
Yeah.
Y'all had them back in the day. You had some good players, too. Last question for you, Ben. Just next season, obviously there's a lot to think about. There's a lot to consider. There's a lot of things going on with you as the champion in the Finstock Exchange. But I think I asked you this even at the pub or the bar there afterward, the spectacular. If you got your opportunity to pick who you'd like to go up against for your first defense, who would it be?
At this point, I'm playing better right now than I ever have. I feel like I understand the game right now better than anyone ever has. And eventually, just like in any sport, people will catch up. So I think now is the time to play the best players. And, it's hard because so many of the best players are on my team right now.
Right.
Like, our faction is so good. It's like I don't want to go and take the belt off. If the Finstock Exchange doesn't really get a whole lot if the Founding Fathers lose to Who's the Boss. So, like,
Right.
I want to be the team's champion, and hopefully this year that's something I do. I believe I will. But, and then in singles, I mean, Dan's the best of all time. So when you talk about legacy, I think at some point playing Dan would be important for my legacy. I don't think it's going to happen quickly because I feel like Dan is going to focus on something else. I think there's a chance Viviani cashes in that number one contender. And, if he does, beating him a second time, I think would be impressive. I think probably of all the players that are out there that are available, kind of close. Obviously Roca has his own sort of appeal if I get to play against John, because I've never beaten John in singles, and he is the legend. John's more of a legend than Dan in the sense of kind of, if you guys know what I mean, like, Dan is the greatest of all time. Dan is the number one player that's ever played.
Legend, for sure.
But John's won with two different teams. He's defended in teams now. He's a two-time singles champ. I mean, he's done everything that you could ever ask somebody in this game to do, other than become an actually committed psychopath and study for inner geekdom. It's a different thing. And so if I was to beat John in a title defense, I think that would be a pretty special thing to have gotten to do. I don't know if John has that desire for singles right now. I think he's when I talk about how long I've been in the game, what I've given the game, I mean John is that times to the nth degree. He's the original guy that did that. Last up there, and unless I just play Oyama again, which I know he'll want to do, because if I was Oyama, there's nothing I'd want to do more than get another shot at it, but it would be Irwin. Right. And Irwin's an amazing player. I think I get convinced sometimes that Irwin knows the most of anyone. So I think beating Irwin would be pretty impressive. But they all have their appeal, and they all have their own challenges.
Absolutely. Well, that is Ben, the boss Bateman, the man who finally went out there and did it. He cashed in. He is the singles champion. He is the guy. And to be the guy, you got to beat the guy. So you got to have a big target on your back next season, brother. But I'm sure that you're up for the task and challenge. And just a congratulations again from Frank and I to you for getting it done.
Boys, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Look forward to next time.